Well, good morning. This is Football Saturday with no football. I call this the dark times. So, what do you do when it's Football Saturday and there's no football games on? You sure as hell I'm not going to watch basketball until it gets to March Madness. I don't care how much money they ask for me. But anyway, that's a whole different issue. So, I want to talk to you this morning about the Donald Trump fine in the New York litigation. It was $350 million approximately, with interest. It's going to be about $450 million. And if he posts a bond, then that's going to be probably another $100 million on top of that. So maybe not that much, but it'll be, let's say, $50 million. So it's going to be about $500 million that he have to post as a bond. So my first comment, now my criticism here is leveled against the media again, because we just you don't get information. I get it because I know where to go look for it. But if I didn't have that ability, I wouldn't know. And the only reason I look for it is because I ask the question and I wait for the media to tell me, or I go on Google and I wait for Google to tell me. And so first of all, we get to this thing about, well, Donald Trump has to post a bond if he takes an appeal. He doesn't have to post a bond if he takes an appeal. Not in federal court, not in New York court, and not in most places. So the purpose of a bond, I'm tidying myself up a bit. It's Saturday, so I tend to go a little easier on this thing. Plus, I can't get this button to work. You tuned in to watch me button my shirt. What, you have nothing better to do with your life? So the first thing is, you don't have to post a bond to take an appeal. You have to post a bond to prevent people grabbing your assets and selling them. Now let me tell you how this works. Let's say Donald Trump doesn't post a bond. So Letitia James, she says she needs the court. I don't know why. I've collected an assets and never had to involve the court except for a asset discovery deposition, which again didn't need to involve the court, because the way it normally works is you go to the sheriff, or to the marshal, in the case of the U.S. Marshal, to go, to put this property up for sale if it's real estate. And then you have a sale on the courthouse steps, and they take bids. It's an auction. And the person who has the judgment, that's like a check. So New York would have a check for $450 million. That's the amount of the judgment against Donald Trump. So they would go to the auction, and they can write out as much of that as they want. So along comes, 5 other very wealthy people who think, hey, this is a pretty good deal for me. I'll buy it. So they come in and some guy offers $10 million. It's Trump Towers. Somebody else offers $100 million. Somebody offers $300 million. And they keep bidding and bidding. The state's sitting there with $450 million that they can bid with this check. And so let's say the most that anybody else bids is $300 million. Okay, so the state of New York comes in and they bid $301 million. Done. Now the state of New York owns Trump Towers. And they still have $150 million left of their judgment. On the other hand, if the bidding keeps going and somebody bids $1 billion, then out of that $1 billion, Trump would get half, and the other half, approximately, would go to the state of New York. That's how that process works. So that's just so you have a little better insight than what you're getting from the damn media, which he keeps pushing this thing that he has to post a bond. He can post a bond, which would prevent the sale of his assets, but he doesn't have to take an appeal. Now, the second thing is, more significantly, I hear constant complaints from the media, and today I heard from Michael Smerconic, whom I generally really like. But Mike's a lawyer. I don't know how much he's actually practiced. But he was complaining, and he complained last week, and he reiterated it again today, plus he had somebody else complaining about this judgment, that this was so large that it was just, it shocked the conscience. And he said, maybe if it had been like 10 million or something like that, he could say, well, 10 million, that's a slap on the wrist. It gives them a lesson and tells them don't do it anymore. And that would send a lesson to other people as well. Don't engage in these kinds of activities. But $350 million? That's outrageous. And then you hear people in the Wall Street Journal, and you hear people on in Fox News. This is terrible. Look at this. With that kind of a judgment, nobody will do business in the state of New York. Particularly in the city of New York, they'll all leave and go elsewhere because they're not going to take a chance on getting hit with a fine like that. And then this other fellow was on TV today with Michael Smerconic, and he was saying, and the only reason they did this is because it's Trump. If anybody else had done this, they'd let it go. Well, if apples were bananas, I don't know, you figure it out. So the reality is no one has done this that we know of to the scale that Donald Trump has done it. And nobody even mentions this part, but a lot of the reason he's able to pull these things off is because of his politics. So the statute, which I bothered looking up, and the court's decision, which I bothered reading because I wanted to know how he reached that amount. I knew that the statute, just from hearing the Attorney General talk about it, is a disgorgement statute. Now, what's disgorgement? No, I'm not talking about when you come in from a 3-day bender. Not that kind of disgorgement. This is a family show, for crying out loud. So, disgorgement means you take away ill-gotten gains. You did something wrong, and as a result of the something wrong, you enriched yourself. And now the state is not penalizing you for that. They're taking away what you shouldn't have in the first place. You have ill-gotten gains. So I said, well, yeah. So if you want to know whether this was an appropriate amount, you have to look to see whether ill-gotten gains. I don't hear that anywhere. No one talks about that on the media, all these talk shows. And when Smerconic was talking about this, it just shocks the conscience. It's too large. He never discussed at all how the court reached the decision. How do I know what the court reached its decision? I read it. And you can read it too. It's not very long, this part about the ill-gotten gains. It's like a couple of pages or less. So what were the ill-gotten gains? Well, the first thing was, because he inflated the value of his assets, and no one's denying that he did that. Nobody with a straight face is denying he did that. Because of that, he was able, in the first place, the people at Deutsche Bank were thrilled to do business with him. Nobody else was. But Deutsche Bank, it's Donald Trump. Oh boy, this can really make us, as the loan officer counting the dollar bills he's going to get out of this thing with his bonus for enriching Deutsche Bank. Deutsche Bank gave him the most favored interest rates that you can get for real estate investments. Because of, and justified it, because of a massive net worth, which he got by doubling the size of his condominium at Trump Towers, by saying that Mar-a-Lago is worth close to $700 million, when he paid, I forget what he paid for it, was a tiny fraction of that. And it's not a house, it's a club. So he just, it's an absurd amount. Like what, 4 times the amount of the highest amount paid for a house in this country ever. And it's like, he just says things if they benefit him. So that was clearly fraud. So as a result of that, he got a hugely favorable interest rate. So the judge, with a lot of experts involved in this thing, it wasn't just the judge pulling this out of his, calculated what interest he would have paid if his property had been properly valued, and they had experts talking about that. And his savings on there was, I'm not giving you the exact figure, okay, this is approximately, because I'm not going to go pull that back out again and write all these figures down, but you can look at it yourself. But it was an area of $140 million. Interest money that he saved by committing a fraud. That's an ill-gotten gain right there. The rest of the ill-gotten gains were from 2 real estate transactions. One was, I think, Fox something, I forget what it was, where he made about an $80 million profit from the sale of that property, which was made possible by the fact that he was able to invest in that property with the money he got from Deutsche Bank. If he hadn't gotten that money from Deutsche Bank, and particularly at that particular interest rate, according to the judge's analysis, actually the expert's analysis, Trump would not have been able to make that sale and make that profit. So that was disgorgement right there. The other one, the big one, was the post office. What? Donald Trump owns the post office? He thinks he does. There's this old post office building in Washington, D.C., and if those of you who go to Washington a lot know what I'm talking about. But for those of you who don't, it's not one of the regular main tourist stops. It's not the White House or the Lincoln Monument or the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts and so on and so forth. It's just an old building. But I've always loved that building. I usually stay down the street from that building and see it all the time when I'm there, and which is more often than I'd like to be, but I go there frequently. So that building, I've always loved it, and I always thought, too bad somebody doesn't do something with it. Well, guess who did? Donald Trump. He bought it. He refurbished it. He turned it into a hotel. The money he got to do that was the money he borrowed from Deutsche Bank, which is the subject of this lawsuit, money that he obtained by fraud. He committed a fraud to get a loan. First of all, it's not clear that had he not committed a fraud, he would have gotten a loan at all. And secondly, even if he had, he wouldn't have gotten it at these interest rates. So once again, the judge did the analysis, the experts did the analysis, which the judge references in his decision, that Donald Trump made a profit when he sold that post office of the balance between the 140 and the 80 and the 350, whatever that was. That's the total. The total was from those three specific matters: the post office, the other piece of real estate, and what he saved on the interest by getting this favorable loan. You add that up, and that's how much Donald Trump made. So it wasn't like he said, I don't care what you're worth, I'm just going to fine you to teach you a lesson. No, he followed the law. The law requires disgorgement of profits made with ill-gotten gains, because the real value of money, when you don't have to spend it to survive, is what you can do with it financially. So you can invest it in the stock market, you can buy real estate, you can do odds, and those things will make you money. So money makes money. You've heard that before. Donald Trump says it all the time. My money makes money. But it's not his money. It's money he borrows. You can borrow money, so you're not putting your own money in. You say, I've got all these assets that you could get if I default, but it's not my money, it's your money. So I'm using your money, Mr. Bank, to make money for me, and I'm paying you back with a modest rate of interest, and you're making some interest, but I'm making the big money because I bought properties that are going to be worth something in the long run. And the only risk I'm running is not my risk, it's your risk. And of course, it's their risk in that they'd have to seize his properties in the event he couldn't pay the money back and so on. But that's what it was. It was three distinct things where he made a ton of money. So New York business people are saying, I'm not going to go to New York. And well, first of all, I think probably New York will say good riddance to you. Number two, they're not going to pull up the stakes and leave. Other people are still going to invest if it's in their financial interest. And most reputable companies are not going to be committing massive fraud to obtain bank loans. First place, no reputable bank will do business with them that way. I don't think the Deutsche Bank finally stopped doing business with Trump. So it's just nonsense to say those things, and it's people that are just saying it once again for their own political perspective, which is basically everybody on Fox News is saying that. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. This is what actually happened. That's how the fine was reached. It wasn't an arbitrary decision by a court just to punish Donald Trump because he's Donald Trump. That was what the law required, and his behavior was so egregious that even though that law is hardly ever used, in this case, number one, his behavior was egregious. Number two, he's way out there in the public about everything he's doing. How he's making all this money, and he's doing all these things, and he's selling these things, and he's this real estate tycoon, and look at all I'm doing. It invites scrutiny, whether or not he was in politics. So that's it for that, and now I'm all worn out. And it's Saturday, and there's no football game, so what am I going to do? Well, the only thing I can do, I'm going to go back to bed.